This video will use a systems thinking approach to explore the concept of positive feedback loops, using examples which are happening around us. Firstly, we need to understand what systems thinking is, based on Donella Meadows' thinking in systems approach. The idea of systems thinking is that you go further than linear thinking, which is cause and effect. A causes B. For example, you run out of fuel, so your car stops.
Timples!
System thinking looks to explore the more complex relationships and interrelationships in our world. It acknowledges that many things affect what we merely see on the surface. Systems thinking would look at the reasons why you could not put fuel in your car. For example, no fuel station en route or the driver's lack of knowledge of how many miles you could travel on an empty tank could have influenced the factors in why the car ran out of fuel. Consequently, putting fuel back in your car won't necessarily stop you running out again in the future, if these other things are not considered next time. Systems thinking, therefore, can be a useful analysis tool. A system being something which has multiple things working together but is seen as a complex whole which performs a purpose or function. Take an engine, for example. The engine is one small system, but it is part of a bigger transport system in which its purpose is to transport people as well as goods and services. It is also important to understand that systems can be influenced by other systems. For example, the economic system as a whole can influence the amount of people who can afford to buy a car, which then in turn affects the transport system. You can choose how to analyse a system by setting a boundary in which to focus on. I will focus on the system of electric vehicle adoption in the UK, bearing in mind I only include what I regard to be the most relevant for the purpose of identifying positive feedback loops. The production of electric vehicles requires a stock of users to drive them. The more people buying electric cars means an increase in electric vehicle production, therefore the stock of the cars increase. The presence of this reaction between demand and supply is the consequence of a feedback. This can turn into a positive feedback loop. As one stock increases, the other in turn increases too, creating a reactionary loop where stocks are influenced and amplified by each other's states. The system known as a positive or reinforcing feedback loop. However, that's just a simplified version. Electric car production and demand is also subject to other influences as it's entering into political, social, economic and infrastructural systems which can also affect its rate of growth. This is explained within the next systems diagram. Let's look at these multiple feedback loops in no particular order. Firstly, the more output that is produced through sales, the more that can be invested to make new capital. An increase in electric car use, the more users, the more electric charging points are needed to keep up with demand. Electric car use amongst peers, neighbours and other influences causes social contagion to occur. In other words, people follow trends and societal behaviours which increases demand amongst the population, reflected in increased sales of electric vehicles. Government incentive also can have an influence on consumer demand. They increase sales of electric vehicles as they have an economic incentive. Government policy also influences the market. The move to phase out combustion engines by 2030 can be regarded as a leverage point to induce change, physically shifting investment to the preferred new system. Finally, you could argue that social contagion was already present due to people choosing electric vehicles without policy in place, allowed the government to see that it was possible to shift the transportation system towards electric vehicles. The characteristics of a positive feedback loop is that it is unstable, increasing away from an equilibrium. Reinforcing feedback loops are self-enhancing, leading to exponential growth or to runaway collapses over time. However, the current economic system sees increasing growth often as a good thing, even if it does push us towards an unsustainable future. The move to an electric car system is a step in the right direction. However, it still operates largely the same, encouraging consumerism and individually owned vehicles. It is not looking to take cars off the road or to change the transport system, but to power cars by a different energy system. Let's not forget the production of cars is reliant on a source, minerals. If our demand of minerals exceeds the ability of the Earth system to reproduce it, the positive feedback loops identified would cease to function as its source would decrease. To conclude, the shift to electric vehicles in the transport system is enabled by positive feedback loops. Has it solved the previous unsustainable transport system? That you can decide yourself.